Bobby, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So Julio Cesar Chavez had a lot of interesting things to say about Canelo Alvarez during this press conference. One of the main things that stood out is the fact that he said that Canelo Alvarez is afraid of Gennady Golovkin. And then he said some other things as well about Canelo, but let me go ahead and quote exactly what Chavez had to say about Canelo. Quote, "The pressure is on Canelo because he's the favorite in this fight. I have the passion for boxing again. This is probably the most important fight of my life. A lot of people think Canelo is afraid of Triple G, and I think the same too. Canelo thinks this is an easy fight, and he thinks Triple G is more difficult. This is why Canelo made this fight. He thinks I'll sacrifice to make 164, and he thinks Triple G is more difficult for him. Canelo is a counterpuncher, but he's never fought a bigger guy than him. He's always the bigger guy, and he never had to worry about the power of the other guy. This time, he has to handle my power and size because in this weight class, one punch can change everything. I need to win this fight and move my career." End quote. Now let me tell you something. The way Julio Cesar Chavez just broke down how Canelo is used to facing smaller opponents, he's a counterpuncher, etc., etc., etc. Man, it almost started to sound like Julio Cesar Chavez just became some kind of boxing aficionado or something. I mean, he damn near sound like Teddy Atlas or Paulie Malignaggi the way he broke down Canelo Alvarez. Because he's absolutely right when he says, and I've been saying this to everyone when it comes to this fight, I've been saying this, Canelo Alvarez is used to being the bigger, stronger guy in the ring. He's used to facing smaller opponents. Now, not all of his opponents have been smaller than him, but the majority of them, they've either been smaller or they just didn't have the size or the power to match Canelo's size or power. With that being said, this is the first time that Canelo Alvarez is going into the ring with a guy who may be naturally bigger than him and just as strong, if not stronger. You know what else is pretty interesting? Julio Cesar Chavez is the second Canelo Alvarez opponent in a row to accuse Canelo of ducking Gennady Golovkin and picking him as an opponent to basically cherry pick and get an easier opponent. I mean, because that's pretty much what Julio Cesar Chavez just said. And that is exactly what Liam Smith said as well. I mean, how often do you hear a fighter's opponent saying, "I think this guy only picked me because he thought that I was the easiest guy to beat," or something on those lines? You don't hear opponents too often say that, right? I mean, you're not going to hear Danny Garcia say he thinks that's why Keith Thurman picked him or vice versa, right? You're not going to hear Vladimir Klitschko or Anthony Joshua say that. But you hear this from Canelo Alvarez opponents, which is pretty interesting. Now, what else is interesting is I just dropped a video right before this one where I was telling you guys that Canelo Alvarez is applying pressure on Gennady Golovkin by offering him $15 million and telling him to take it or leave it. So it clearly sounds like Canelo wants to fight, but yet at the same time you have people like Julio Cesar Chavez, he's not buying it. He still believes that Canelo Alvarez is afraid of Gennady Golovkin. But speaking of being afraid, it'll be really interesting to see if Julio Cesar Chavez goes into the ring against Canelo and he fights this fearless type of fight. That would make for a very entertaining matchup. So that's pretty much all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
Hi, I'm Brianna, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.